Welcome back to Next Shift with Rick Wagan. Suzuki does not suck. This is the summer show where the Montreal Canadiens have had a very active off season, and we're looking at the start of training camp and rookie camp and development camp and all the other camps for another month or two out. And so I'd like to kind of touch on the Montreal Canadiens and what they've done so far and how I look at the team and what's going on. So first of all, I'd like to pull up on the screen the projected lineup for 2025. And as you can see, the Montreal Canadiens are going to lead off, and obviously these lines are yet to be fully determined. And I have my own opinion on some of these things that I'll talk about. But ultimately, what we're looking at is that top line of Cole Caulfield, Nick Suzuki, and Slafkovsky. Obviously, those guys are going to be on the team, and whether they all play together for the full season, we'll see. I'm very optimistic about the way I saw Juraj Slafkovsky play in the second half of the season. I know I said that the year before. Obviously, it's very important for him to kickstart his season early. Cole Caulfield, 37 goals. I see him improving on that with players like Demidov and maybe Dach playing up to their capabilities, as well as Patrik Laine getting a full season in and potentially playing a little bit on the power play, PP1 or PP2. Like I said, Juraj Slafkovsky with 18 goals. Watch the highlights of Caulfield's 37 goals, and I think Slafkovsky either had the primary assist or was integral in more than 50% of Cole Caulfield's goals. And then Nick Suzuki, the player that does not suck, he's only going to improve every year. He's obviously reaching his prime and should be great for the next few years. On the second line on this list, we have Ivan Demidov. I look at Ivan Demidov, or Ivan, I guess is the way he pronounces his name, as the next one. Laine HUTSON, if he's him, Ivan Demidov is him 2.0. If I kind of look at these two a little bit like a miniature version of the Colorado Avalanche. Cale Makar, Laine HUTSON, Ivan Demidov, McKinnon / Kucherov. Those two players are going to be super elite. The difference between the Montreal Canadiens and Colorado Avalanche, scarily, is that the Avalanche didn't have a Cole Caulfield, Nick Suzuki, Slafkovsky, didn't have Noah Dobson and Caden Guhle, and who knows what's going to happen with Jacob Dobson and Jacob Fowler in the future. And Sam Montembeault is a solid goaltender. So we'll see how it all plays out. I've left a couple of names off this conversation so far that we want to drill down on, but ultimately Ivan Demidov is going to be a superstar, and I'm looking forward to this season. I'm projecting him to get close to 80 points. That's where I feel he'll fall, or land, I should say, not fall. Kirby Dach is the wild card, right? The Canadiens were obviously looking for a second center. They did what they could to improve their team this year. They got Zach Bolduc, which I thought was a great pickup, and they obviously picked up Noah Dobson, another solid pickup. Kirby Dach is a player that if you looked at him 2 years ago or 2.5 years ago, he was playing on a line with Caulfield and Suzuki and had a great run there. Then in the preseason of the year before last, and early in the season, he just looked like a 1A, 1B center. If Kirby Dach can come back and play anywhere close to that at center or even at wing, I think that would be a huge lift for the Montreal Canadiens. I think when you look at the second line right now with Patrik Laine and Kirby Dach, I don't think in a perfect world this is going to be the second line. If this second line works out and Patrik Laine and Kirby Dach and Ivan Demidov have the kind of chemistry that's needed, this could be rival to the first line. Obviously, it's much less defensively responsible, and that's something all three of those players have to work on, and that's a concern. And that's probably why they may not end up together. Players like Zach Bolduc might jump onto that line. Other players like Joe Veleno, or who knows, maybe there's a player in like an Owen Beck or a Kapanen might jump into that line. So, and ultimately, the Montreal Canadiens might make a trade. There's going to be teams this year that in October, November, if they're out of it, they may be willing to get to part ways of a veteran or a midway veteran center to lower their chances of succeeding and ultimately get Gavin McKenna, who is probably a next generational player that's up for the draft. So there's going to be opportunities to trade for a second line center in the not even the second half of the season, but towards the holiday season. And obviously, in a perfect world, a player like Kirby Dach can realize his potential, and or Patrick Laine, who again scored 20 plus goals in 50 plus games and had the potential to score much more. This is a team that's going to have an incredible power play. I believe that the young kids of HUTSON, Demidov, Slafkovsky, Suzuki, and Coffey will be the first line power play. But there's nothing to sneeze at a power play with a Patrick Laine and a Noah Dobson and a Zach Bolduc. Throw in a Dach or a Gallagher and or a Newhook or an Anderson. Who knows how that can all fall out? I think the biggest, the second half, the six forwards that they have here on the bottom, I think players like Zach Bolduc, Alex Newhook, and Joe Veleno could bump up to the second line. Even a Josh Anderson or a Brendan Gallagher could play a part in those lines, depending on injuries. I think the biggest gap we see, obviously, is on the faceoff dot. They lost a 55 to 58% centerman in Dvorak, and they didn't replace a left-handed shot player, with a face-off capability. Obviously, Joe Veleno is in the mid-40s, Alex Newhook's in the low 40s, Kirby Dach is in the 30s, Jake Evans is low 50s, Nick Suzuki's low 50s, and overall in his career he's around 50 or even below. Zach Bolduc never really played center at the NHL level or even in the junior level. It'll be a challenging season on the faceoff dot that I see, and that's probably their weakest area. And ultimately, the Montreal Canadiens are going to need to find a specialist there that can play and take big faceoffs, especially on the left side. That's going to be a gap that I see. That will probably be one of the areas that's going to be glaring as the team kind of progresses. That second line, if it can click, is great. But again, if they don't win the faceoffs, they don't get control of the puck, and they're in their defensive zone, and they're not playing well defensively because they're just not, Ivan Demidov is a young kid. Kirby Dach is not proven, and Laine have not proven themselves to be the reliable 200-foot players. That's the risk I see of that line. And ultimately, I think that line will split up a little bit, but I still believe in Kirby Dach. I know others don't. I'm a fan of the player. I think he obviously had major injuries, and I'm not positive he'll step on the ice in September, October and be the player he wants to be or needs to be. But ultimately, I still believe in that player. Alex Newhook's another one that, if you look at his highlights, his goals are beautiful. He skates beautifully. He misses a lot of opportunities. He's an interesting player, and if he can turn into a 200-foot player, a Paul Byron type player, a Russ Courtnall type player, that would be an interesting way to see him kind of fall into the Montreal Canadiens. I don't know if he falls in the line with Josh Anderson and Brendan Gallagher. I might have Jake Evans play on that line and Patrick Laine playing with Joe Veleno, and maybe like an Alex Newhook, and ultimately have Kirby Dach play with Zach Bolduc and Demidov. That's how I see the lineups going, but we'll see. On the defensive side of the puck, Caden Guhle, Laine HUTSON, Mike Matheson, Noah Dobson, Arbor Jack, Alexander Carrier. I don't see. Obviously those lines could switch around. Carrier could play with Matheson, Dobson could play with Jack, Dobson could play with Guhle. Everyone could play with everybody. I think this is a solid D core. Obviously very young, other than Matheson and Carrier. Well, Dobson's not that young either. So, I'm looking forward to watching that Montreal Canadiens defense core fly. Again, I'm going to go back to what I said before. Laine HUTSON won the Calder Trophy. He looked incredible out there, broke records on the offensive side of the defense, looked really solid defensively. In the playoffs, got beat up a little bit, and that's one concern we still have on this team is, are they going to be a playoff-ready team? This is a team that has a high likelihood to compete and maybe make the playoffs again. Once they make the playoffs, I don't know if they're built for the playoffs yet, and that's okay. I think the Canadiens are trying to figure out who are the players that are going to continue on and who aren't. But this is a young team, the youngest team in the NHL, and Laine HUTSON is going to lead the way as a second-year player, and Ivan Demidov is going to prove to the NHL, to the to the fans, to the Montreal Canadiens, and I know a lot of people have been saying this recently. I've been following this guy since he was drafted. Before he was drafted, watched over 25 games of the KHL last year, maybe more than that. I mean, this player is a superstar. So we have a superstar in Ivan Demidov. We have a very elite center in Nick Suzuki. We have an elite goal scorer in Cole Caulfield, another one in Patrick Laine if he can figure out how to play a 200-foot game. And Juraj Slafkovsky is another wild card, as well as Dach. Both of those players, if those players improve and show up and play to their ability for 80 plus games, the Montreal Canadiens are going to make the playoffs for sure. And if they don't, they still may make the playoffs. And if they, make the playoffs, those two players, Slafkovsky and Dach, are going to be key contributors to winning in the playoffs because they're big players who can play a mean game. Dach could fight, Slafkovsky can hit. I'm really looking forward to this team this year. So we'll have more conversations as we go. I think Zach Bolduc is in the wrong seat on this chart. I think Patrick Laine and Kirby Dach are the wild cards in the second line. I think anyone on the bottom six are going to play with each other. I don't think that's going to be a big factor. The penalty kill is a factor, but I think Newhook's going to play some penalty killing. Maybe Bolduc will play some penalty killing. Suzuki will probably penalty kill, and obviously Anderson and Evans will play, as well as Laine could play a little bit on the penalty kill. Gallagher could too. So we'll see how it all plays out. They may miss Savard on the penalty kill as well, but Dobson is a good blocker. Caden Guhle and that Matheson are solid on defense, and Jack Guy has to step up along with Carrier. So very excited for the season. Can't wait to see how it progresses. It's been an interesting summer. I think Kent Hughes and Gorton did a great job of building this team. And again, I know that they did their best to find a second line center, but I think half the league needed a second line center. And I think there's an opportunity with Gavin McKenna kind of being the wild card at the end of the year for some of these teams that are not having great starts, that are going to need some level of a rebuild. Will be open to looking to move a player in November, December timeframe, or a little bit later. Again, looking forward to the start of the preseason and the start of training camp, but just want to kind of touch base with you all and have a bit of a conversation of what we're seeing so far this summer. That's it for me. That's it for Next Shift. Suzuki does not suck. Talk to you guys soon.